Good evening, everyone. Please take a seat. We'll get started. So we're excited you're here. When we picked up Julie from the airport today, we wanted to tweet out to the world that the Eagle has landed. We're here. We're excited to get started. A few thank yous that are due before we get started. First, thank you to our Board of Education, to Dr. Valoria, to the Martini family via School Power for all of their support. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the mighty Instructional Services Department and Public Communications Departments for their coordination of tonight. Thank you so much to them. Some housekeeping for this evening. Immediately following Julie's presentation, we'll have some Q&A. We'll have a book signing outside from 7 to 7:15, and then we have presentations by our site leaders. You won't want to miss. Those will begin at 7:30. One of our district themes is every student, every day. We're so pleased to begin this work, to continue this work with you. You've partnered with us, but we've also had many partners in the community. School Power, we're so grateful for your support tonight. Thank you. Thank you for partnering with us. So through various forms of feedback, you've taken many surveys, you've talked to us, you've had candid conversations, and you've informed us. We share high expectations for your students. You look to us to maximize your child's success. And by and large, your children feel safe at school. Parents and teachers report that students are motivated and enjoy learning. But students report that sometimes, just sometimes, they have difficulty finding meaning and purpose. So that's why we find ourselves here tonight. We're excited about our social emotional work, and we appreciate you as partners. Let me introduce someone who will introduce our speaker to you. Miss Charlie Hoffs is the Laguna Beach High School senior. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Dr. Odipo. It is an honor to speak here tonight. As a graduating senior looking ahead on an exciting future, I also reflect back on my past and the people who helped me get here. And of course, it was my school, my friends, my teachers, but most importantly, it was my parents. And from a young age, they always supported my passion for learning and my thirst for knowledge, but more importantly, gave me space to pursue my own passions and develop my own independent curiosity. And the whole sort of journey that brought me where I am today and the passion I decided to pursue began on one of our family trips to the public library. My mom took my brother and I pulled down from the shelf a book on Chinese characters. And I thought they were just sort of beautiful. And I took the book home and started illustrating them in my journal and downloaded little Chinese apps on my phone, you know, as kids sort of get into little hobbies. And my parents supported what was then just a little side interest. And incidentally, at the time, we were planning a trip. And we had put some money and time aside, and we were all talking about where we'd like to go. And I said, I'm learning Chinese. Let's go to China. And my parents were like, yeah, let's go to China. I'm into that. So we decided to go, and in the weeks preceding the trip, we all watched together this documentary series on Netflix, Wild China, and I was sitting there taking scrupulous notes. And we went on this fantastic trip, and I came back really dedicated to pursuing this language. But my school, my old school in Los Angeles, didn't have the sort of rigorous Mandarin program I thought I wanted. So I asked my mom to help me find an online program, and we did. And I took that class for 7 years, and that was fantastic. But it was also missing sort of the human component that you lack in online education that you need to really learn a language and connect with people and connect with a culture. So this one took a little bit more convincing. I asked my parents and ultimately persuaded them to let me go live in China on a foreign exchange program. So they let me go away for summer, and I came back. I wanted to get an internship, and I remember working with my dad to craft emails to executives at this Mandarin education company I wanted to work with. And this whole sort of process culminated in my being selected to represent the US at an international Chinese language competition in China, which my mom came along the ride for. And in my final speech, I thanked my mom for having been the one who supported me to get there, and went on to win the competition. And I've always been an independent learner, but I never would have gotten anywhere without my parents' support. They always supported me in everything I ever wanted to do, but also let me kind of do my own thing. And so with that, I want to introduce our speaker tonight, Julie Lythcott Haims. She is a graduate of Stanford University, Harvard Law School, California College of the Arts, and served for many years as Stanford's Dean of Freshmen, where she fiercely advocated for the young adult and also worked against overparenting and helicopter parenting. And out of her experience there, she wrote this book that you all may have heard of, How to Raise an Adult, Break Free of the Overparenting Trap and Raise Your Kids for Success. And in it, she tries to help parents learn how to cultivate meaningful and fulfilling lives in their kids. And also, she recently came out 6 months ago with her new book of prose poetry on race relations in America, Real American, which is a must-read. So I am especially grateful to Ms. Lythcott Haims because I will be benefiting from her work on behalf of Stanford undergraduates as I attend Stanford for the next 4 years. So thank you. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Julie Lythcott Haims.
Thank you, Charlie. I know there are probably 5 or 6 people in here taking notes. I can make my child learn Mandarin. What a wonderful trajectory. And I'm glad you're able to share it with everybody, and I wish you all the best up on the farm next fall. So thank you, Laguna Beach, for inviting me to be down here with you. I know who you are. I'm from Palo Alto. You might have heard of it. We're a little community up the way that thinks as fondly of ourselves as you do. And so I feel very much at home here. I want to thank Alicia Odipo and Michael Keller and their team for putting together this visit. I'm really honored to get to come to a school that has folks focusing on social and emotional support of kids as opposed to only the sort of academic rigor aspects of their upbringing. I also want to thank Brent Martini for helping make this event happen. Yes. As some of you may know, Brent has put some support behind a concept called Global Citizen Year, which is a gap year program. More and more these days, American kids are doing what the European kids are doing, which is taking a nice year away between high school and college to go do some meaningful growth and learning. I happen to be on the board of Global Citizen Year, and Brent has, I can say this, right? Where's Brent? I'm allowed to say it. Okay. I didn't know if all of a sudden, don't tell people. Brent is supporting 2 scholarships for kids from Laguna Beach to come and be a part of Global Citizen Year. So we send, we send students to Senegal, Brazil, Ecuador, and India. They have an apprenticeship. They have a live-in homestay. They learn the language. They know the language if they're going to India, but if they're going to one of the other 3 countries, they come back likely fluent in that language. And they get a break from a high-pressure childhood and are much more focused, graduate much more quickly than is the national average when they do go to college. There are all kinds of good things that come from it. It's a great organization. I just say that at the outset because what we're going to end up with at the end of my time is a set of solutions to a problem I've described. And I've kind of front-ended one of the solutions, which is gap years can be great. And if there's anyone in the room thinking, my kid might need something like that, there is plenty of time still to apply to be a part of Global Citizen Year's fellow cohort for the coming fall. All right, talk about putting the cart before the horse. So thank you for having me here to Laguna Beach. As I said, I'm delighted to be here, proud and honored to be here. I think I have a college classmate, Michael Gilman, in the audience. There he is, down front. Occasionally I mention my friends and they're not here, and then it's an embarrassing thing. Then they walk in and they're like, oh, you're late for your friend's thing. No, so Mike, thank you for being here. We're gonna go get a beverage of our choice afterwards, which will be fun. Charlie gave me a great introduction. What she didn't tell you is that I'm a parent. I have an 18-year-old son in college, yes, and a 16-year-old daughter who's a junior at Henry M. Gunn High School in Palo Alto. Gunn and the Palo Alto Unified School District is said to be the best public school district in Northern California. And I am neglecting my 16-year-old by being here with you, right? I should be over her shoulder, making sure that everything, it's a junior year, you guys, come on, right? So I'm just sort of tipping you off to the fact that I'm here with you instead of where I should be, which is over-parenting my junior. My book is on the harm of over-parenting. How to raise an adult, break free of the over-parenting trap, and prepare your kid for success. And I just want to reassure everybody that the folks here at Laguna Beach High School didn't invite me here because any of you all are guilty of overparenting, but rather because you all are leaders in the community, you are influencers, people look up to you. Tonight we're going to talk about what other parents are doing wrong. And then you can go out into the community and tell other parents how to be better parents. How does that sound? Is that good? All right. All right. So what is overparenting? We use funny terms like helicopter parenting, snowplow parenting, lawnmower parenting, tiger parenting. If you watch the sport of curling on the Winter Olympics, curling parenting. Do you know that sport? You seen it? It's a long, thin sheet of ice, and people shove a stone down it toward the end zone or whatever the end of the curling ice sheet is, and the people out in front of the stone are sort of warming the ice, somehow melting into the top sheet with their body heat. That's the metaphor for helicopter parents. In Canada, curling parents, the child is the stone. Drone parenting is a term I've heard down here in Southern California. You know, you can hear it, right? Hear the parents swooping in. Okay, so we have all these funny terms to describe this funny behavior. It breaks down into 3 kinds, and a parent can be doing 1, 2, or all 3 of these. So the first type is the overprotective parent. This is the parent who believes the world is scary and unsafe and unpredictable. They're right about that to some degree. And therefore, I must prevent everything from happening and protect at every turn rather than prepare my kid to be strong out there. So this is the parent who wants to bubble wrap the kid, put the bike helmet on in the house just for walking around. It's the kind of you never know. It's the kind of lightning might strike at any moment. So type of approach to parenting and the sort of GPS tracking of children. Where are you, honey? I'm down the hall, Mom. Tracking them like they're endangered rhinos in the Serengeti. And so overprotective. Overdirective, this is the second type, or the tiger type, which some people erroneously think is only endemic in Chinese American communities or Indian American communities, and I will tell you I have seen this type of overparenting among folks of all ethnic groups. Okay, this is the parent that kind of does this a lot. I know best what leads to success, kid, and you will do as I say. You will be a doctor. You will go into finance. You will go into STEM. And the kid might feel that their love of the parent is conditioned upon, the kid following that path, right? Anyone? You will be a tennis star, right? We do this in our family. You need to do that. Okay? No one ever says, you'd better be an art history major at that expensive college I'm sending you to, right? Nobody says, don't come home for Thanksgiving, kid, if you're not a philosophy major, right? We have a sense of the 6 or so career trajectories that are acceptable to us. We tell us that it's the way they'll be successful and happy, overlooking the fact that when someone is basically a robot marching down the path of their life according to someone else's instructions, it doesn't feel very fulfilling. So the parent who's the fiercely over-directive is, interested in making sure the child is on the right start academically from the get-go. And so something like this could happen. The child is 3 and they're at a park and the child sees a butterfly on a plant and the child says, butterfly. And the parent says, yes, great job, honey, butterfly. And then the parent writes a little note to themselves, might be a lepidopterist one day. Those are people who study butterflies. Okay, so, just interested in that, I am going to make them into that thing. All right, the third kind of overparenting is the parent who is the excessive hand holder. This is the parent who approaches parenting, might even use that term a lot. Sense of self is largely wrapped up in parenting. The parent is kind of like the personal assistant for the kid, like the handler. Like the kid is a Hollywood, star person and needs help constantly. Someone running behind, cleaning things up, bringing the forgotten things, right? This is the parent who's like the concierge parent. How can I make your childhood more pleasant, honey? Just here to serve, here to be your best friend. I'm going to wake you up. I'm going to plan your day. I'm going to track your deadlines. I'm going to keep track of your belongings. If you've forgotten anything, lunch, coat, lacrosse stick, homework, I'm going to drop everything and show up at the school with it for you. I'm going to monitor your homework. When it gets done, we're going to do it. I'm going to make sure it's in the bag. And of course, if you forget the bag, like I said, I will bring it to you. And then the concierge / maybe the parent who's also over-directing, because sometimes these two go hand in hand, either in the same person or partners, spouses. This one's the over-direct. This is the concierge. One of them is going to call the teacher. How did we get a B? We worked really hard on that paper. And don't get me started on the California Mission Project. I can't talk about the California Mission Project when I'm in 49 other states, but here, right? You walk in, what is it, 4th grade? You walk in and your kid has got the mission made out of cake or pasta glued together and painted red for the roof. And the architect's kid shows up with the foam core and the parents stayed up all night with the glue gun and they have those little miniature trees that only architects have. And it's like, great. I should have been an architect so my kid could pass 4th grade. All right, and the concierge parent shows up at everything. So when we were young, maybe some of you are younger than me. Yeah, it looks like it. I'm Gen X. I'm sure there's some boomers in the audience, some Gen X, maybe some millennial parents in here. Okay, I'm 50. When people my age were young, our parents might have come to the championship game. Not every game. Not a single practice, right? Remember? Right. But oh, how that has changed, right? We must come to every practice because that is evidence that we are a good parent, okay? And the concierge parent, the handholder, wants to really be there, at all times because you never know what your kid might need, when you're standing on the sidelines of their life. And then it becomes the performative, I need to show everybody what a great parent I am. So when it's my turn to make the soccer snacks, I'm going to make the organic gluten-free bagels with the homemade cream cheese made from, the goats that I milk in my backyard. Totally happens here, right? Do you have goats here in Laguna Beach? I don't know. I don't know what kind of backyard animalia you have here. We're Velcroing our kids' shoes too long. All right, so that's the concierge. Those are the three types. And why do we do this? Why are we so involved? This is my body language metaphor for involved in our kids' lives in ways our parents weren't. Well, we fiercely love our kids, probably more than we were loved by our own parents. They matter to us. And we're afraid, naturally in some ways, but really in overblown ways. We're afraid of what will happen if we're not there to attend their every move. We seem to think that actually every single aspect of their lives is a make or break moment for the future we want for them. So we think every single score matters, so on the playing field, so we will argue with the coach, and we'll argue with the umpire, and we'll argue with the referee, right? And we'll argue with other parents because that matters so much, because we're worried they won't, get into the right college if they don't get that goal today, right? Or not just the tests in school, but the quizzes, all of those matter, right, to us, like the homework. Aries? Is that what it's called here? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to intimate that this is happening here, but I go to other places that have similar software portals for parents, and parents confide to me afterwards in the signing line that they're in therapy because they're checking the portal multiple times a day. And some of you are like, yeah, of course I am, multiple times a day, I need to know, are we getting an A-? Are we getting an A? Are we getting a B+? My kid might need therapy if they've fallen to a B+ this week. Okay, I've touched a nerve because you're not laughing. It's all right. Okay, so we love our kids fiercely and we're terribly afraid. And we have this sense that the right college, the right future for our kids requires us to be overprotective, fiercely directive, and hold their hands forever. We kind of believe that if you don't go to the quote-unquote right college articulated by U.S. News and World Report, that you will not have a future. The mindset is it's Princeton or prison, Even though the evidence is right here in this magnificent auditorium that successful, happy, respected people mostly didn't go to the big brand name places, right? Successful, happy people, amen. Applaud for yourselves. Successful, happy people didn't go to college, went to community college, went to one college, flunked out, tried a different college, went to a big state school, went to a small college no one has heard of. A few people went to a big brand name place. Okay, the evidence is here that successful, happy people mostly didn't go to big brand name places, but we don't really want to believe that because we really have become so enamored of those most highly selective places that we want the bumper sticker, right? For the back of our car, to impress all the drivers behind us with how amazing we are. I mean, our kid is, right? So we increasingly have this need to prove our worth and value, and our kids' accomplishments and the places they get into and go to and the things they do become reflected back on us, we think. It's like the child is our trophy of reflecting our worth and our accomplishments. And there's no better way to demonstrate that we've done our job than to have that bumper sticker that says, look where my kid is going to college. And we end up sacrificing often a healthy, vibrant, fun adult life. All of this work, this concierging, this over-directing, this protection takes time and it takes effort. We are worn out by this, It's just, someone might say, hey, come to this awesome art gallery opening on Thursday night. And our heart leaps for a moment, remembering what it was like before we had kids, and then we say, oh, sorry, we can't go to that fun adult gathering with you because we have a midterm tomorrow. We have a midterm. You don't have the midterm. It's your kids' work. Anyway, so these are some of the reasons why we do it. Our sense of self, highly, highly connected to how our kids are doing or how our kids are perceived to be doing in our local community. And we also do it because it works. Overparenting works. If we overprotect on the playground, if we stand 2 feet away from the rock wall or the swing, to catch them before they would otherwise land on the rubber wood chips, they go unbruised. Whichever body part was going to hit, that doesn't happen. We have saved them from that. If we intervene in play, no longer is there free play. It's all play dates, scheduled, handled by parents. Tell them what to play. Make sure it's enriching. Get involved before any hurt feelings ensue. We protect them from having hurt feelings. These feel like wins in the short term. If we overdirect, we can force them to pursue STEM, particularly if we condition our love of them on it. We can force them to become a tennis star. It happens. They can achieve those things, but then they become that person who says, now that I'm 35, I can finally do what I want because I did what my parents wanted, and now I'm going to go be the human I really want to be. And if we're the concierge, we bring them the forgotten stuff constantly. They never get the 0 for having forgotten the homework. They still get to play the lacrosse game or the soccer game because we've brought the equipment. They don't go a little hungry because we brought the forgotten lunch or the coat. I don't know if y'all need to wear coats here. I don't know what the clothing you bring. Oh, it's lighter weather. You need your light fleece, honey, because it's going to be 62 degrees today. I know, Palo Alto, it's the same thing. Okay, so the point is this: their little brains learn to remember the coat and the homework and the lacrosse stick and the lunch by forgetting. They learn from the sting, the ouch, the slight embarrassment or the slight, of having forgotten. That is how the brain rewires itself. I don't want to feel that way again. Better remember it next time. So short-term win. But then it has these long-term costs. All right, so it harms them. There's this thing in psychology called self-efficacy. If Descartes said, as Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Self-efficacy is, I do, therefore I am. I act, there's an outcome, that's how I know I exist. Okay, the psyche, the human psyche, must develop self-efficacy to be healthy and whole. Okay, it doesn't matter how great one's outcomes are. Self-efficacy isn't, I'm awesome. Self-efficacy is, I exist. We develop it by seeing the causation. I acted, there's a result. Whether the result was amazing or mediocre, it doesn't matter. We need to see the causation. So when a parent, acting from love and a bit of fear and a lot of ego maybe, decides to overprotect on the way to the outcome, or fiercely directs the outcome, or holds the hand too long to get to the outcome, we are depriving our kids of developing that self-efficacy that would otherwise have ensued over time. The psyche knows it didn't get there itself. Here's another harm our kids suffer from. They're not resilient when they've been raised this way. This childhood that I've described comes with this objective on our part that everything will go smoothly, everything will be fine, everything will be perfect and highly accomplished. We act as if, as I've said, every piece of homework, every quiz matters. We come into this with this hope for perfection, so we smooth the path. We argue with teachers, we escalate to principals, we escalate to the superintendent, maybe the school board, we're shouting at coaches. We're basically trying to so smooth their path, and often we succeed. Our kids end up these chronologically adult beings who are 18 or 20 or 22 who don't have any muscle memory about how to cope when something doesn't go perfectly. So you have college students who get a B and decide they're worthless because they've never had to cope with anything less than that before. They get rejected from a club they're hoping to join because it's limited in size, or a group, a fraternity, a sorority. They don't get into a seminar limited to a small number of people, and they worry. Am I still me? I don't know how to be if everything isn't going my way. They also tend to lack life skills because we have almost, walked them across the street throughout their childhood. You see kids who are on their devices, mom or dad is looking both ways, and the kid just follows along on their device like a little duck, but little ducks are at least looking where they're going. And they, I don't know, I suppose they can tie their shoes because they are Velcro half the time, but they don't know how to talk to strangers. Why? Because their childhood has been this admonishment, don't talk to strangers, kid. But then they leave our houses, and who do you suppose their lives are filled with? Strangers who they're afraid to talk to because they've been taught to fear people instead of taught the skill of how do you discern the one creepy stranger from the vast majority of humans who are perfectly fine. And then they get to the workplace, and they want someone to lay out exactly what they need to do, just like childhood was laid out. Go to this school and take these classes and do this well and have this kind of enrichment and do these sports and these activities and this leadership and this community service. All of that was laid out for them. Not to say it was easy to accomplish all that, but the path was laid, right? And then they get out into the workplace, there ain't no path laid. It's the wide open landscape of the working world, and they're supposed to be useful. They're supposed to try to anticipate what might my boss need 2 or 3 steps down the line, and they don't know how to do it. Childhood has not prepared them for that. They're very good at following directions, but they can't really think outside the box or think a number of steps ahead. And they want a lot of applause and approval in the workplace because childhood has come with all of this applause and approval, right? You can hear it. You can hear the narrative on the playground. You can hear the narrative in the house. Perfect. Great job, buddy. Right? Everything is perfect. Swing and a miss. Perfect. Great job. You tied your shoes. Awesome. You didn't hit Billy. Everything is like, yay, 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 yay. And then the real world doesn't offer that, which then feeds back into this, like, wait a minute. Deer in the headlights, am I okay? Because all of a sudden people are mean to me, which is just really, no, people are concerned with their own stuff, self-absorbed. It's not about you, They haven't learned any of that. All right, and then worse than all of this is that their mental health is compromised. So I'm going to read to you some statistics on the mental unwellness of our young adult population. This is from a survey done by the American College Health Association that surveys college students every year around the country at all kinds of schools, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, public, private, West, East, North, South, Midwest, small, medium, large, religious and unaffiliate, all the schools. Not all the schools. There are 2,800 schools. They got results this year from 153 schools. That's all the schools you want your children to apply to one day, and 133 more. A 100,000 college students responded to the survey in 2013. 84.3% reported having been overwhelmed by all they had to do. 60.5% were very sad. 51.3% felt overwhelming anxiety. 46.5% felt things were hopeless. The stats more recently taken are worse. There are studies linking the over-involved parenting style with higher rates of anxiety and depression, including these. Up the street at UCLA in 2006, they produced a study that showed that parents who tend to take over tasks that children either are or could be performing independently leads to greater rates of separation anxiety in their children. A 2010 study out of Keene State College up in New England found that students with helicopter parents were more vulnerable, anxious, and self-conscious. A 2011 study out of University of Tennessee at Chattanooga found that students with hovering or helicopter parents were more likely to be medicated for anxiety and or depression. A 2013 study that was reported in a journal called the Journal of Child and Family Studies found that college students with helicopter parents reported significantly higher levels of depression and less satisfaction in life, which the researchers attributed to a violation of the students' basic psychological needs for autonomy and competence. That's the basic psychological need necessary to develop self-efficacy. A 2014 study out of CU Boulder was the first to link the over-involved parenting style with less executive function in children. All right. Our kids, when raised this way, regardless of these mental health correlations, can come to feel that their worth as a person is some function of their GPA and their standardized test scores and the various things we want them to accumulate, to be able to say we've succeeded as parents. They can start to feel that way. Why? Because when they come home from school or we come home from work, when we see each other for the first time at the end of the day, what we tend to say, particularly if we've been on Aries, is, what happened on the science test? Thought you studied for that. And the kid's like, I don't even know how I did, Dad or Mom, but I tried, Or, how much homework do you have? When are we going to do your homework? When are you going to do your homework, Homework, it's all about home. They have not even put their bag down. They have not even had a snack. They are in the place called home with the people who ostensibly love them unconditionally. Imagine if you came home from work and you were putting your briefcase, bag, backpack, whatever it is, down. You're looking to get the beverage of your choice in your hand. And the people who love you most say, how was that meeting today? You going to be better tomorrow than you were today? Or were you better today than you were yesterday? How would you feel? I think our kids feel like dogs on a leash. I think that we end up acting like trainers at the Westminster Dog Show. You ever watch that, any of you? Raise your hand if you know someone who's a big dog show person. Okay. Safer that way. All right, so the trainer has the outfit and the leash and the dog. And the trainer has devised, there's the course and the dog does it. The trainer's got the clucks and the ticks and the, come on, ooh, right? That's us. The dog is the kid, and they do all the work and so on. But, come on, it's our dog, right? Who really did the work to train that thing? Me, all right? Or they're like little greyhound dogs in a greyhound dog race, which is a much less varnished version of being a dog. Okay, they're in a race called childhood. The child is the dog. They've got blinders on. They're staying in their lane. They've got all these competitors near them. We're up in the stands rooting for ours, betting on ours, looking for return on investment, and the race starts. This is childhood, and they follow that dirty little rabbit around the course, and they've got, that's what, our expectations and motivations and so on, and they run around and whether they finish is 18 years of age, finishes high school graduation, whether they finish first or second, darn it, or 10th, or the middle of the pack, or near the back, what do you suppose the first thing they do is? They look up to us. There we are clinking our drinks in the stands. We're in our outfits with our friends. Look at him run, isn't he great? Look at her go. That's my child. We're clinking drinks with one another, watching our kids in this race called childhood. And they're done, and they look over their little shoulders at us, into the first eyes they ever looked into, ours, with a look that pleads to know, am I good enough yet? Have I pleased you yet? Are you proud of me? And whether they finish first or second or 10th or halfway through or they're, pulling up the rear, this childhood makes them tired out, worn out, frazzled, brittle, old before their time. To continue the return on investment metaphor, sometimes I think we're treating our kids like stocks in the stock market, particularly with Aries, the parent portal for grades, right? It's like, how are we doing today? Like you might manage your stock portfolio. We're going to sell this one. It's not doing very well. Like your kid, is something you just might jettison for a better investment. But my favorite metaphor is the bonsai tree. This is, if you've seen my TED Talk, I refer to it there. It's like we have this ideal vision of a child as we're thinking of conceiving them, as we conceive them, as they're, growing inside us, as we give birth to them, as they start to make their way, we think, oh, I would love it if he or she would look like this, be successful in these ways. I want a child who does these things, who looks like that. And so then that's our ideal. Like a bonsai tree is based on a real tree growing in the wild. The gardener takes the bonsai tree. The child is the tree. We plant it in the right pot, the right community, the right schools. We expose it to the right things, and then we take our pruning shears and we clip them here so they'll grow more here. And we clip them here so they'll grow more here. And we clip and prune our children so that they resemble what we wished they would look like. As Dean of Freshmen at Stanford University, I saw these parental behaviors continuing to the college level. And I was seeing what colleagues all over the country were seeing in various tiers. It wasn't a Stanford thing. It wasn't all Stanford students by any means. But as a dean whose job was to give a darn about my students, who are you, kid? What do you know to be true of yourself so far? What are you good at? What do you love? What do you think you might want to make of this one precious life? My client, my care was a student, not what did their parents want? What did their entire extended family expect? What did their ethnic community think was acceptable? Who are you, kid? That was my focus. So I would see this, and every year there seemed to be more and more students still on this leash, and I would be concerned to see that parents were still reviewing papers as they had done in high school, and parents wanted to argue with professors about grades. And a story I heard from a different campus, parents installed a webcam in the freshman dorm room. Who'd want to review that tape? But it was just to wake their child up. Some of you are like, I would never do that. And others of you are thinking, yep, that's going to be me next year, because if you're waking your 12th grader up in May of their senior year, how are you going to stop in August? When you're paying all that money, you're going to want to be sure they're awake to go to those classes you're paying for. The point is you're supposed to create an expectation that they wake themselves up much sooner. I know 5 of you are pulling out your phones, you're texting your child, you're going to wake yourself up tomorrow morning. And I would rail against what I was seeing on my campus. Believing in the right of this young adult, the imperative that they have agency in their own lives. I would give a talk from a podium on a stage during orientation to the parents gathered, and I would say as kindly as possible, trust your kid. They have what it takes to thrive here. Trust us, number 2. We're not trying to get away with doing as little as possible for them here at Stanford. Trust your kid, trust us, now please leave was my 3rd message. I didn't ever wag my hands at parents, but I was thinking inside, come on folks, this isn't middle school, go away. And then I discovered to my horror that I was on track to be one of those parents who would not be able to let go of my own precious children. So now that I've known you for about a half an hour, I'm going to share with you some of my personal stories. Like some people you may know, I was always obsessed with my children going to the right school. Anybody relate to that? How many of you know someone who's always been obsessed? Raise your hand. You know somebody. And where I live in Palo Alto, the right school is Bing Nursery School. It's a nursery school on the Stanford campus. It's a laboratory for the psychology faculty who specialize in infant and childhood development. They have one-way mirrors. They're observing the kids and their parents, I'm sure. The kids are told, let's play a game, but it's really like a psychology experiment, okay? And if I knew anything, when I was an undergrad at Stanford, I thought if I ever have children and live near Palo Alto, I will want them to get their rightful start in life at Bing. So I'd had a C-section with Sawyer, my eldest, my son, and I'm in the hospital for 5 days, and we're finally being discharged, and they were wheeling me out in the wheelchair, and my husband, Dan, has Sawyer on his shoulder, and, Dan is carefully putting Sawyer into the infant car seat. Remember the infant car seat with its 5-point harness? I mean, it was 5 points in 1999. It's probably a 12-point harness by now. And I'm just gingerly getting my stapled together C-section self into the car. And, Dan eases the car out of the parking lot. I'd given birth to him at Stanford Hospital because I thought it couldn't hurt. And not really. Okay, maybe a little bit. But anyway, so he eases the car out onto the road, onto the bigger road, onto the highway. We live in San Carlos, about 25 minutes north of Palo Alto, but it should take about 25 minutes, but it takes about 40 minutes because Dan is driving so slowly because we have our infant on board. So finally we get to the house and Dan turns off the car and he unbuckles himself and he's coming around to get Sawyer. And I say, honey, actually, could you just go into the house and on my stack of papers on my desk, about 2/3 of the way down is an application for Bing Nursery School. Because I'd had it for 2 years, but Bing won't let you apply if your kid is just in your head. So you have to have a name and a birth date, which we now had. I had filled all the rest of it out. So I said, honey, get the form and fill in his name, Sawyer George Lythcott Haims, 61599, and we need to get back in the car and drive back down to Palo Alto. I'm like newly nursing. I don't really realize that I don't have this much time, to be in a car at this point. All right, so anyway, you guys, he was 5 days old. I didn't want to ruin his future, is my point. We had to get that form in. So Sawyer got into Bing. Thank you very much. And 2 years later, his baby sister Avery got admitted to Bing. And one day when Avery was 4, it was my day for pickup. I had a very busy full-time job, but a flex schedule on Wednesdays for my entire time at Stanford. And so I was late. My gig was leave work around lunchtime, go get kid number 1, kid number 2, be home, come back into the office around dinner time and work until 10 or 11 p.m. That was my deal and I liked it. So I'm late. I'm trying not to be the last parent. And I race from my office to my car. I drive the car over to the part of campus where Bing is. I find a parking spot. I park the car. I race up to the front doors of the nursery school. And I'm stopped by the nursery school teacher with her nursery school voice. Julie, how are you? And I'm thinking, I'm stressed, I'm late. But I didn't say that. I was like, great, how are you? And she said, great. Do you have time? You know how that lands. Do you have time to look at what Avery did in nursery school today? And I'm thinking, no, I don't have any time. I'm late for her. I got to go get him. And then no. But I didn't say that. I said, sure. So I walk into the classroom, I see my girl, I'm not last, thank goodness. I pick her up, give her a squeeze, and together we walk over to this round table in the corner where the teacher has laid out all of the art Avery did that day. This particular day, it was watercolors done with Q-tips. She's 4, and she made 12 of them. They were this big, the canvas, all laid out. And I'm thinking, it's Wednesday. If she's this prolific, tomorrow we'll be out of wall space in the kitchen. But I'm keeping that thought to myself as the teacher is trying to impress upon me that she's showing me this artwork because Avery has made use of the canvas in a very artistically mature way. And I'm smiling and nodding and oohing and eyeing and acting like I care. But inside, I'm thinking, yeah, but that's just art. That's not going to get her into Stanford. So by then, we have bought a house in the Palo Alto Unified School District. As I've said, second only to Laguna Beach, right? And we bought a true tear-down house no one else wanted. My mother sold her house back east. We sold our San Carlos house. We combined the equity to buy one truly damaged house nobody else wanted so that our kids could go to these schools. Well, in all seriousness, the Palo Alto Unified, my kids' high school, there are 2 high schools, Pally and Gunn. Henry M. Gunn has had not 1, but 2 suicide clusters in the last 12 years. None of us knew when we were aching to buy our homes in this community that there was something about being a kid in our community that was incredibly stress-inducing, beyond the pale. None of us knew that. Of course, we just went in the direction of the right test scores and the right college lists and so on. And so here we are in the Palo Alto Unified, and I'm cramming my large body into the small seats in elementary school, back to school night, raising my hand. What do we need to know to be successful in the 3rd grade? I need to know what's happening in 3rd grade so my kid, I wanted to get a jump start on the mission project. What can I say? So, and my kid Sawyer is going off on play dates, and Sawyer is a reader. He's always loved books, and he would take a book on play dates in case the play date didn't work out. Do any of you have kids like that? Like, I can count on the book even if I can't count on this human being, you know? Humans are unpredictable, but books, okay. So, you know, and occasionally the play date, the kids wouldn't get along, and I would worry, maybe the parents, maybe we need to talk about it, work it out with each other, you know, and Sawyer started to say things like, you know, I love science, he loves science, he loves, as he got older, would read classics and mythology and philosophy, but science was his thing, and, you know, he's just started to really demonstrate promise in that field. My mother's a science educator with a PhD in science education, so we got science in the house, we all live together. All right, so, you know, the kids are going along, and we're doing just fine, and we're micromanaging everything, and everything is lovely. And I'm giving my 7th annual speech to parents of Stanford freshmen. Avery and Sawyer are now 10 and 8. My speech, remember, trust your kid, trust us, now please leave. So I do that again for the 7th annual time. Then I come home the next night, we're having dinner, we're having chicken, and I sit next to my 10-year-old son, and I lean over the plate and start cutting his meat. Some of you are like, so? 10's too old to have your parents cut your meat, y'all. Somebody's texting home right now. Gonna learn to cut your meat tomorrow, 11-year-old. Yeah. Because those knives are sharp, you want to tell me. Yeah, I know, the knives are sharp. And how ridiculous is it when a 15-year-old can't figure out how to use a knife? Because they've always had their meat cut. So that was my aha moment, believe it or not, around helicopter parenting. I realized, of course you can't let go of your 18-year-old college student if you're cutting the meat for them when they're 10. There are so many skills to learn between cut your meat and go to college, you know, or the military, or wherever it is they're headed after they leave here. You know, I realized I had 8 precious years to infuse in my son all of the skills he would need to leave our home and confidently fend for himself. And I realized we were many, 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 many years behind. That was an aha moment. I had another aha moment a couple years later. Maybe Avery was about 10 by this point. I was having office hours, as I did every Friday afternoon. Open door with students. Student has, you know, come to see me. She wants to talk. She's a sophomore named Faith. She's 20 years old, and it's about February of her sophomore year, and she wants to talk about the work she's going to do this summer. That's what she's indicated to my assistant is what we're going to talk about in office hours. So I'm getting to know Faith, and she says, well, I'm pre-med, and she shrugged like that. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, well, you know, I have to be. And I said, what? She said, yeah, you know, my parents are both doctors, and they expect the 3 of us to be doctors. And I said, Faith, that's, you know, I want to say like ridiculous, but I didn't. I was like, Faith, whoa. And she's sort of puts her hand out to say, not going there with you, lady, you know. I'm pre-med. I said, all right. So you wanted to talk about your summer work. What's the deal? And she said, well, not only am I pre-med, but they review my study list every quarter, and if there's room for an elective, I'm allowed to propose electives I might want to take, but they can veto items. And they want me to be an athlete, so I play soccer. And she said, I don't think I want to do what they want me to do this summer. And I said, what do they want you to do? And she said, they want me to do a medical clinical internship that'll look good for med school apps. And I said, well, Faith, what would you do if it was just up to you? And she said, well, I'd like to work with abused animals, but I don't think they'll let me. And I said, all right, Faith, well, what would it take for you to think about broaching that subject with them? What might be a tool you could use to persuade them or to get them to listen to your perspective about what you want to do? At this point, her eyes filled with tears, and it was clear her lips were trembling. And even though this is what she came in to talk to me about, she could not at this point speak. So I softened my voice, and I said, Faith, how are you doing? And she said, I have a 4.0. Is that what I was asking? Do you think that's what I was asking? No. I was communicating, how are you? How are you doing? How are you? I'm concerned about you. Are you okay? But by that point, age 20, Faith was accustomed to knowing how she was doing as a function of her GPA. I'm doing great. I have a 4.0. So I put on my Carol Dweck growth mindset hat, for those of you who've studied growth versus fixed mindset, and I said, Faith, wow, you must be working very hard. Most people don't have a 4.0 here, let alone in the pre-med curriculum. I bet you feel proud of yourself, and rightly so. And she just shrugged her shoulders again and shook her head. And she said, I just hope as long as I do what they say, maybe they'll go easier on my younger siblings. And in that moment, sitting across the room from this child of other people, I stared down a new truth, that I was looking at a grown-up version of my girl. I had this unmistakable sense that my precious child would be a college student somewhere one day, and the dean or the advisor trying to help her work through what should you major in, what do you want to do with the summer, might ask her the good questions I try to ask my students. Who are you? What do you know to be true about yourself so far, kid? What are you good at? What do you love? What do you want to do with this one precious life? And I was pretty sure in that moment, staring at Faith, who was trying not to cry, that one day Avery would be on a college campus, ask those questions, and she would say back to them, well, I was good at art, but my parents wouldn't take it seriously. That day, I think I began to be a better parent to my sweet girl. Well, by now, Sawyer is a sophomore at Henry M. Gunn. He's 15. It is fall of his sophomore year. My kid is doing incredibly well. He has ADD, but he's been able to manage it, because he's a bright kid, and he loves to read, and he's the kid that asks the questions in class. He's the kid when the science teacher asks the hard question, they all look at Sawyer. And the teacher says, why are you all looking at Sawyer? And the kids go, because he knows the answer. He's got 5 hours of homework sophomore year in the fall. Honors Chem, Spanish 3, Algebra 2 Trig, fast lane to lead to the right calculus, to lead to the intergalactic calculus in college. Fancy English, fancy history, 2 other classes, I don't remember. You get the point. A rigorous sophomore year. And my bright kid is doing very well, but he's got 5 hours of homework by October. And I begin to see that my kid, who just wants to read, he loves reading. He reads at breakfast. He wants to read at dinner. We don't let him read at dinner because we know we're supposed to have that family dinner where we all talk. Sometimes we call it a reading dinner for the whole family. Okay? He doesn't really have time for much reading. It's just come home, do the work, have some dinner, do more work, go to bed. And he doesn't do any activities, no sports, no activities. No, this kid just reads and thinks and has good friends and is a good person. So I'm worried about the workload. I mean, it's only the fall of sophomore year, y'all. It's not junior year, which we're all complicit in letting be awful. We've decided the colleges want junior year to be stacked with all this stuff so they don't have to sleep as juniors, right? We can compromise their health and wellness. This wasn't that. This was sophomore year. This is not what I had planned for us to experience. So I'm watching him do this work and just trying to hold his little head above water. And into the weekend this goes, and he's doing more work on the weekends, which had never really happened before. He had never had to. And my husband and I sit down with him, and we talk about chunking big assignments into small and better time management, and how to talk to his teachers about how to make sense of all these building blocks, these puzzle pieces that are his homework. Hoping that this will bring some relief. And into the second week this goes, and the animated energy I think of as Sawyer's life force is starting to diminish. He's just a kid who's always loved school, always been good at it, and now he's just come into breakfast with his head, and he just holds his head on his chin and eats. He's not bringing a book to breakfast. And into the second weekend this goes, and into the third week this goes, and now it's November. And I noticed that Sawyer was leaving Spanish 3 for last. He loved Spanish, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, but now 10th grade is just something isn't clicking, and he's just hating it. And he's leaving it for last. And it's about Thursday in week 3, and it's about 11:30 p.m., and he's still up doing homework, and I'm exhausted, and my husband's exhausted, but we have this policy of, we don't go to bed before him, because that's like saying, oh, we're exhausted, but you stick with it, kid, right? So I'm fake doing dishes at the sink. There are no dishes to be done, but I'm just near. My son's at the desktop in the kitchen over there, and his back is to me so I can see the desktop screen in front of him. And sure enough, I can see he has left Spanish for last, and he's not even doing his own Spanish, you guys. He's letting Google Translate do it for him. So I'm panicked because my kid is cheating. All right, now when I tell this story to high schoolers, they quickly say, that's not cheating. At which point I say, I'm not here to argue that with you, but it isn't learning. I'm pretty sure he's like putting in the English, it's telling him the Spanish, he's writing it down. There's not a lot of, conjugate that verb going on in his head, okay? My kid is cheating. My kid is operating in a way that is not sustainable, all right? So I go to my husband, what are we gonna do? It's only fall of sophomore year. We still have to get through the rest of sophomore year, all of junior year, and half of senior year. Right? The rest of senior year, it doesn't matter, right? But to get him into the right college. But we were worried about our kid. This wasn't what we had in mind. He's bright, highly accomplished, he's at a great school, taking a really rigorous curriculum to get to the right college, to get to the right future. I was working on how to raise an adult. Right then, I was revising it, telling other parents what to do, talking the talk, that there are plenty of great colleges. A kid doesn't have to have a perfect record in high school. Failing and falling is human. Plenty of great schools. I was writing it down. I hadn't yet begun to believe it in my head. But being worried about my own kid, my husband and I decided, did we need to ask him, does he need to drop a class? So by now it's midnight, Sawyer has finished his work, he's up in bed, and I knock on his bedroom door, and he lets me in, and he was still sleeping in the wooden Harry Potter themed loft his daddy built for him when he was a little boy, in a room lined with bookshelves, with hooks on the walls, the dungeon looking walls, hooks for wands and hooks for cloaks, and this kid is in this bed, 15. And I climb the steps up to his gray loft, and I look down at Sawyer, and I say, sweetheart, Dad and I are so impressed with how hard you are working, and you're doing so well, but it looks as if it just might be too much. You don't even have time to read anymore. That's who we've always known you to be. Baby, do you think you might need to drop a class? And my firstborn child looks me in the eye and says, can I? Don't you want me to do all of this, Mom? Don't I have to? Isn't it what'll make you proud? Well, you know what I was thinking. We bought this house here so you could go to this school, take all of these classes, do exceptionally well, get to the right college. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I looked at Sawyer and I said, honey, in some theoretical universe, we wanted you to have access to all of this, yes. But what matters more than any of that is you, and you're struggling. You might even be suffering. Honey, do you think you might need to drop a class? And Sawyer said, I'll think about it. And his eyes brightened a little bit, just being seen in his struggle, just us acknowledging, this looks really hard, kid, helped. So he came down for breakfast the next day with a book under his arm, which I took as a good sign. And he said, Mom, I think I might need to drop a class. And I think it might need to be Spanish. And I said, yeah, I thought maybe the Spanish was part of the problem here, Sawyer. But by this point, I was not the concierge that I had been. Can you drop? How do you drop? What are the ramifications? I role-played with Sawyer how he could show up in his guidance counselor's office in conversation that was respectful, but that advocated for his own needs. So when the guidance counselor said, you can't drop Spanish, Sawyer, why? Because colleges want to see it. Sawyer said, colleges want to see language proficiency, and I'm probably not going to impress them with the D I'm likely to pull off. And if I drop Spanish, I'll have one fewer class of signing work, and one more hour in the day in which to do my work, and I can do the honors chem that I love, and the algebra 2 trig, and the fancy history, and the fancy English, and the 2 other classes. And Sawyer dropped Spanish. And we got Sawyer back. When it came time for us to think about where he would go to college, Sawyer had been, on this science trajectory. He started saying, I want to be a research scientist. I want to get a PhD in genetics. I want to win a Nobel Prize for making a difference at the level of, the genome. And I thought, well, that's lovely. I'd love for you to have a Nobel Prize, honey. That's great with me. lepidopterist, Nobel Prize, whatever, you know. And so I went looking for better lists than US News, and I found lists where PhDs get their start in the natural sciences. There are lists on the internet. Top 10 schools sending graduates on to get PhDs in Sawyer's intended field, biology, natural science. 3 big universities, MIT, Caltech, and I think University of Chicago. Top 3 big universities. The other 7 on the top 10 list are small liberal arts colleges. Kalamazoo College in Michigan. I had never heard of it. Swarthmore in Pennsylvania. Carleton in Minnesota, and Reed in Portland, Oregon. I'm seeing these schools. I started to take Sawyer to visit some of these schools, because if this is what this kid wants, he should go to schools that prepare you well for that. So he applies to schools. I made him visit. You know, he applies to a few more. He applies to 13 schools. And he's rejected by half of them, you know, because he dropped Spanish. Or all of these other reasons, no sports, no activities, no leadership. You know, he just reads and thinks. Try impressing a college with that. When Reed College admitted him, they sent a letter with confetti that spilled out into the kitchen, and the letter contained a book. They sent the Iliad to my kid, and there's no better way to tell Sawyer George Lythcott Haims that you want him than to send him a book. You know, this is a kid who put a book in the pocket of his shorts to go to high school, cargo shorts laden with books. And I used to wonder, when is he going to realize the girls he's attracted to are not attracted to boys with books in their pants? Until he found one who was. All right, so he's admitted now to 7 places, and he won't decide where to go. And my husband and I, now it's, late March or early April, and we're every day or two we're like, Sawyer, we need to talk about this, and he's like shuts down. Should we go on some more visits? We've got to set up these visits. I don't want to go any more visits. All right, well, you have a lot of information here. You can make a matrix. You put the schools on one side, and you put all the variables on the other, and you just check the... We were having a conversation with him, and he started to nod off. It was daytime, and he just did not want to engage. And my husband and I were so worried. He won't engage. He won't decide. What do we do? Maybe he needs to go see a therapist. Sawyer, you need to go see Dr. Alper, who gave him his ADD diagnosis. Sawyer biked across town 20 minutes to go meet with Dr. Alper twice to talk about his ball of anxiety over deciding where to go to college. Well, he comes home from a date, 1 a.m. curfew. It's middle of April. And I'm up drinking wine. My husband's asleep. And my son and I have our best mother-son moments late at night. So we chit-chat about life. Then something about my body language shifts to signal to him, I'm about to ask you about college. So he preempts whatever I was about to say by looking me in the eye and smiling and saying, Mom? And I said, yeah. And he got serious. And he put his hand out on my shoulder. He said, Mom, I have a lot of anxiety about this process. I said, I know, sweetie, I know, Dad, and I can see it. I was probably this close to his face. I know, honey, there's a matrix, though, if you want to just... A friend of mine developed a software matrix that maybe you want to bike to go see Dr. Alper again tomorrow. And Sawyer says, Mom, I think the root of my anxiety is you guys. And I'm thinking, not me. I write the book. I wrote the book that tells other parents what to do. Surely not me, son, but I didn't say that. I said, I'm so sorry, Sawyer. I never wanted to make it harder. And then I said, it must have been hard for you to say that to someone like me. And then I said, good night, honey. I love you. Let's talk about this in the morning. I wrestle my husband awake. You're not going to believe what Sawyer said. He says it's our fault, So the next day, our fault. I had to get my husband in there, And so we call him into our bedroom for the first time in his life. And my husband reiterates, and we come around to this. We love you, Sawyer. This is your decision to make, and we know you can. And we're going to back off. And we backed all our energy off, and you know what that meant? There was room for Sawyer to show up in his own life. About April 22nd, now I'm on the road in St. Louis giving a talk on this book, and I get a text, time to talk, Mom? I've never had a text like that from my children, so I'm like, yes. All caps, yes. Emoji dancing mother, yes. And he calls me, uses the phone to make a phone call. And he says, Mom, I decided I'm going to read. And I decided on read because every time I picture myself on a campus, it's read. And when I told Dad and Avery just now that I was going to go to read, I felt so good in telling them. That just kind of reinforces that it's the right place. And I'm really nervous about that senior thesis they're going to make me write, but I'm pretty sure they're going to support me in being successful. And I said, Sawyer, you could have filled in the blank with any school. As long as you sound that way, I'd be happy for you. He sounded more happy, more confident, more mature than I had ever heard him sound. Y'all, I've learned the hard way that my children, Sawyer and Avery, are not pets on a leash held by me. They're not stocks I need a return on investment from. They're not bonsai trees for me to clip and prune to resemble the ideal child I had wished in my mind they would be. They're not any of those things, and neither are your sons and daughters. Our children are wildflowers. They're human beings. They're wildflowers. They are becoming their own selves. My daughter Avery is an artist. And when she came to me junior year, signing up for classes junior year 1 year ago, she's now a junior, this time sophomore year, she said, Mom, here are my class proposals for next year. I don't think I can do APUSH. AP US History, that class everyone has to take in order to please the right colleges. She dances 20 hours a week. She's like, how am I going to do APUSH on top of this AP and that AP and this and that and so on? I don't think I can do it. And I said, that sounds right to me. This is your decision to make. And if some school doesn't want you because you didn't take APUSH, to hell with them. You know, you do what's right for you, kid. And my son Sawyer is in love with biology at the molecular level and wants that PhD in genetics. And what I've realized is I cannot want that PhD or that Nobel Prize more than he does. You know, I've learned we cannot airlift our children to the summit we have in mind and plant the flag and call it their accomplishment. Because I've seen that, and they stand there bewildered, wondering, where am I and how do I get down? Our job as parents is to put ourselves out of a job, not to micromanage them, perfect them towards some college outcome we want or some career we hope they'll have, but to support them in figuring out what they're good at and what they love, loving them hard so they get out there, loving themselves, knowing how to work hard. It's not about the college they go to. It's about, do they have the skills and the mental wellness to thrive wherever they go? Join me in no longer treating our children like bonsai trees, but in treating them as the glorious wildflowers that they are. Thank you. Laguna Beach, thank you. Now sit down. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that. Now I got to tell you some really practical things, and then we're going to do some Q&A. So, to turn to the practical, you were not forced to be here tonight, I don't think. Maybe your partner or spouse was like, come on, I'm bringing you to this. But I want you to look at who's here. Let's bring the lights up a little bit if we can. Look who's here. Because we're in a community, in a situation where we all feel, out of our fears and love and egos, and a whole lot of peer pressure, we feel we have to parent in this way that sucks the life out of our kids and ourselves. I want you to look at who's here, because anyone here is willing to be a part of this conversation here in this town about what the low-hanging fruit is and what might happen differently. I'm going to throw out some suggestions. Number one, how about we stop letting U.S. News and World Report dictate how we raise our children? All right? Yeah, I know. And some of you are like, well, but really, I want that bumper sticker. I know. Okay, I wanted that bumper sticker. Do you get that? I wanted my son to go to one of the biggest brand name places. And then I decided on one evening to value my son over my need for him to go to one of those places. Okay, I urge you to to think through that story when something similar shows up in your house. There's some research that actually bolsters us in making the decision not to force our kids to go to a place, denying, or to try to get into a place, denying 90 to 95% of all applicants, okay? Get that. 90 to 95% denied. My friend and colleague at Stanford, Rick Shaw, will say of the 40,000 plus applicants, 30,000 could do the work. Okay, they're admitting 2,200. Thousands of qualified kids who have what it takes won't get in. Okay, that's fine because there are plenty of great places beyond the highly selectives. Here's some research to bolster us in the confidence we need to widen those blinders. If you read Malcolm Gladwell, in David and Goliath, he cites research that shows it's advantageous for a college student to go not to the most selective place they get into, but to a place where they can be in the top 10% wherever they go. It's the big fish, small pond benefit, because it's the top 10% on every campus that get the attention of faculty, which is the holy grail of the undergraduate experience. Okay? Faculty who will talk to you, answer your questions, invite you to their lab to do their research, who will write you good letters of recommendation. You will dive deeper into the material if you're engaged with the faculty. That leads to better grades. The better recs, the better grades lead to more options after college in the workplace and grad school. You want to go to a place where you're going to be tops there, not in the bottom half. Okay, this is research in Malcolm Gladwell's book. There's research by guys named Kruger and Dale that's a longitudinal study that showed if you had the grades and scores and accolades and awards, et cetera, to be in the running, in the profile for one of these highly selective places, but didn't go there, you went somewhere else, your income 20 years later was no different than the people who went to the highly selective place. It boils down to it's not the school that makes you who you are, it's the kid. Who are you and how do you show up at college and how do you apply yourself, okay? There are better lists than US News. Colleges that change lives. 40 small schools where the alumni and the trustees and the administration and the parents and the students, they say, this place changed my life. Okay, this is research done by a guy who was the education editor at the New York Times for a long time, Lauren Pope. Everyone wanted his advice on, well, what's the best college, because you're the education editor for the New York Times. He went out on this trek for a couple of years and researched a couple hundred places by visiting and talking to the humans who worked there and went there. And without presuming this would be so, this phrase, changed my life, came up at only a tiny fraction of places. He compiled that list. It became the Colleges That Changed Lives list. 40 terribly small schools. Okay, you haven't heard of most of them. What they have in common is they're tiny. The faculty there are only there to teach and mentor undergraduates. There are no grad students. The undergrads get all of that small class attention and mentorship, and it's a residential environment. Reed College, where Sawyer's happens to be there, it's the best known brand name probably of the 40. And Reed is not known in a lot of places. They don't participate in US News because they know the rankings are BS. And when you don't participate in US News dings you by putting your standardized test scores 200 points lower for SAT than your peers. That's the way they punish schools for not participating. So, Colleges That Change Lives, ctcl.org. I urge you to look at it. There are 40 of them. They're around the country. The nearest ones to you are one in the Bay Area, one in New Mexico. There is not one down here in SoCal. There are a lot in the Pacific Northwest. There's another list, the Alumni Factor, which looks at alumni outcomes from 225 schools, from the things you might value like finances and net worth of the alumni to friendships and happiness and intellectual development. Okay, they've surveyed alumni without ever saying we're surveying you about the college you attended. They managed to conduct a pretty sophisticated research project that yielded these outcomes on how did the alumni at these various schools fare. Check that out. It's online, the Alumni Factor. I encourage you to become the parent who can do some research into a few schools beyond US News, because then in this community, this could happen. Your kid's a sophomore here, okay? Your friend says to you, hey, so, Johnny's a sophomore. Where's he going to apply to college? And you smile at your friend and you say, oh, we're not obsessed with that anymore. And your friend's like, of course you are. And you were last year. And you say, no, we've really gotten clear that When the time comes, there are plenty of great schools. There are 2,800 schools in this country. The top 5% are probably magnificent. That's 140 schools, and most of them are not denying 90%, okay? And your friend at this point, seeing how chill you are, wanting to feel that way themselves, their mouth will be agape. So into their open mouth, you spoon feed this information. You say, oh, but I'd love it if he'd apply to Elon College in North Carolina. And your friend will say, where? Because they haven't heard of it. But you've heard of it because you've done a little bit of research. And you drop a fact or two about why Elon. You know, or you say, oh, I'd love it if she'd apply to the honors college at University of Louisville in Kentucky. And your friend will be like, ha ha, what? Kentucky? You're like, yeah, one of the top producers of Fulbrights. And your friend will be envious that you have this information and that you just seem to be widening your blinders, okay? Then you become the person who's changing the community, because your friend is like, well, if it's okay for Brent, then it's okay for me. You know, if it's okay for Jan or Steve, it's okay for me. If they're letting their kid look at more places, it's okay for me. It's okay for me to consider these things for my kid. And then you can become the kind of parent in the community who no longer asks teenagers those taboo questions. We know we're not supposed to ask each other, how much money do you make, who'd you vote for, what's your religion, and how's your sex life? Even though we might like to know, we know we're not supposed to ask. We ask the most taboo things of teenagers. Our kids' friends, when they come over, where are you applying to school? How are you taking the SAT or the ACT? Are you applying early anywhere? These are among the most private things in the life of a kid. And we just want them to throw it all out there. Because we need to know why, so we can compare in our heads how our kid is doing vis-a-vis that kid. And they come to feel that not just at home, but in the community, in the homes of their friends' parents, that all we value is this stuff. We have to become more adept at talking to teenagers. We have to treat them like we actually are interested in them. We have to be curious about them as humans. When they come into our homes, we should say, hey, kid, can I make you a snack? Do you need something to drink? What's good in your life these days? And watch how teenagers who you think of as sullen, won't talk, this and that, how they open up when you just dare to show them that you care about them as a human, which, by the way, is a universal need. We want that too. We don't want to just be reduced to our title, salary, the car we drive, right? We want to be valued because we exist. So do our kids. All right, so this whole college thing can be just broadened. We can just relax a little bit and know that there are plenty of great places out there. I've been presuming everybody's into four-year schools. You don't have to go to a four-year school. There are great community colleges right here throughout California. Some people go to community college only. Some people will go from community college to the four-year, a much more affordable way to get the four-year degree. You don't even have to go to college. You know, there are great trades. I just read an article. There are great trade jobs that are vacant, offer a great wage, you know, because not enough people are going into the trades anymore because we think everyone's got to go to college. There are more options than we realize, and I encourage you to do a little bit of work and investigate so that you can become satisfied, that you don't have to be, you know, on this train, this, you know, be part of this process that's asking kids to mortgage their childhoods for a chance at admission to a place that requires perfection. If any of what I said resonated to you, overprotective, fiercely directive, holding their hand too long, I encourage you to stop doing three things tomorrow or, you know, Monday, if you want to wait, stew on it over the weekend. You're going to get a bookmark when you leave here, and these three things are on there, so you don't need to write this down. Stop saying we when you mean your son or your daughter. We're on the travel soccer team. No, you're not. Try to run up and down that field, you know. Stop arguing with all of the adults in your kid's life. Teachers, principals, coaches, superintendents, referees. I'm not saying kowtow to authority. I'm saying teach your kid to advocate for themselves, to speak up for themselves respectfully with authority figures. Teach them about how to work with a system, a bureaucracy, and so on. That's a life skill. Teachers are under siege, particularly younger teachers, who are constantly made to feel that you know more about their field than they do. And that's arrogant, and it's harming the relationship between teachers and kids, and parents and teachers, and so on. All right, and the third thing, if you're ready for it, this is a hard one. Stop doing your kids' homework. I know nobody here, but we all know someone else who's doing their kids' homework. And it's unethical. The teachers don't know what the kids know. And worst of all, into the kid's developing mind goes the message, hey kid, you're not capable of succeeding in the 4th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade. I have to do your homework for you. The longest longitudinal study of humans ever conducted, the Harvard Grant study, said they'd studied humans over decades of their life, and it found 1,000 things, including this. Professional success in life came from having done chores as a child. Oh no, I know, right? Chores are a part-time job in high school. So it's not Kumon, it's the vacuum, okay? Chores build work ethic. Chores build a sense in a kid, I should help out. I should pitch in. I should contribute my sweat and my effort to the benefit of the whole. I am accountable. I am responsible. I have to do things in order to make this place run. That's what gets them ahead in the workplace, okay? That study also found that happiness in life equals love. Loving relationships with fellow humans. So if you're the type of parent who needs to know before you know anything, what happened on the science test? How much homework do you have? When are we going to do your homework? I want you to think about making a 1-week experiment happen in your house where you say to your kid this, hey kid, I know I'm always asking you about academics. I always need to know what's happening in school. And I realize, this is key, you have to say this, I realize that in constantly asking, I'm signaling to you that I don't think you care, so I have to be on top of it. And you also have to say this, I know you care. So I'm going to back off. For 1 week, I'm just going to practice. For 1 week, I'm not going to ask you anything about academics, homework, etc. Parents report to me that there's more laughter in the home when they do this, and not because the child is flunking out and everyone's hysterical. I know some of you are thinking, okay, I could do that experiment, but not now because it's a really important time of year. Or do the experiment whenever you can. But the point is, the conversation between parent and child is no longer academic, transactional stuff, but it is in this realm of what's good in your life, what's going on. You're getting to know each other as people, which turns out to be a really important way to foster connection between you and your kid. You got to be building skills in your kid. There's a 4-step method for teaching a kid any skill. Cross the street, cut your food, use a stove, put things in your backpack. Okay, there's a 4-step method. First you do it for them, then you do it with them, then you watch them do it, then they do it completely independently. That's also on this card, okay? So, cross the street. First you do it for them. You're holding them. Then they're old enough to walk and hold your hand. You do it with them. You walk to the curb of your choice, the time of day of your choice. You narrate out loud how far you stand away, how you look left and right and left. You slow it down. It's excruciating. Don't do it when you're in a hurry, okay? Unless you want to be carrying your 11-year-old across the street, you have to teach them. Okay, you do step 2 enough times, you can move to the excruciating step of step 3. Let go of their hands. Then you watch them do it. You announce, hey honey, we're going to continue practicing crossing the street today, but today I want to hear you think it through. And your little one says, okay, Daddy. And he stands with his feet halfway off the curb and you say, pull it back, buddy. And then your little one says, I look left and right and left, and you're there to say, slow it down. Much slower. You got to really look. Again, it's excruciatingly slow, okay? Yes, you could do it faster. Duh, you're the parent. You're teaching your kid. You do step 3 enough times when you can move finally to the terrifying stage of step 4. You could be listening to a speaker on a Wednesday night and your kid could be crossing the street without you. Not when they're 5, but 11, or 15, fine, 19, whatever you think, is appropriate here. Okay. If any of this is hard for you, if your sense of self is wrapped up in crossing the street for your kid, making every single thing happen in the house, if your sense of who you are is wrapped up in all of this, I will say that that is what therapy is for. And I don't say that with disrespect. I have shared only a handful of my own stories with you. You know I got more, okay? We are hurting. Our children are not us. They're not mini-me's. They're not our project. They're not our trophy. And if our sense of who we are is too wrapped up in our kids, that is what therapy is for. Or more simply put, get a life, and maybe your kid can have one too. Okay? All right, now I'm going to take your questions. And I would love your first name. Go ahead. We got questions.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Keller. I'm the Director of Social Emotional Support. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for Julia's amazing talk tonight. We're going to turn it over to Q&A. I just want to readjust the schedule a little bit. So we'll do about a 10-minute Q&A. And question, please state your name. Please be mindful of time. We got about 10 minutes. And then all great questions end in a question mark. So who has a question?
There's a lady up there.
Hi, Julie. I'm Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
What advice do you have for the kid that don't want to go to college?
Yeah. How old is the kid?
16.
Doesn't want to go. So I think what we want to do is take an interest in who they are and who they see themselves as being. You know, if a kid doesn't want to make forward momentum because something is wrong, like they're depressed or they're, having some kind of difficulty, it's worth unpacking that. But aside from something being wrong, which I'm not presuming there is, but I think it's important to kind of try to understand where the I don't want to is coming from, then it's about helping them see the wide open landscape of possibilities. I told Sawyer, after high school, there's a 2-year college, 4-year college, military, gap year, or work. You should choose one deliberately rather than have one happen to you, by default. So inviting the child to imagine themselves beyond this place, and then delve into what do you like doing? What brings you joy? If a kid doesn't know what their passion is, plenty of kids know they have to have their passion by January 1st of senior year, or November 1st if you're applying early. But if it's, if the kid doesn't know their passion, as many don't, you can look for clues and invite them to look for clues with this concept of flow. When were you last in flow? It's a concept pioneered by a guy named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, an Eastern European thinker, who says flow is that state wherein, like, it's equivalent to athletes being in the zone or musicians in the groove. You lose track of time. You don't even notice your hunger or thirst. You're just in it. You're challenged by the thing. You're captivated. The challenge is just slightly beyond your skill set, so you're kind of learning and growing. Looking back on a day or on a week or on a semester, when do you think you were in flow? That's a bit of a clue to what really turns you on, and what you really enjoy. And those things are worth paying attention to. They're like little clues from the self about what that self wants to become. So I'd have that kind of conversation about what the kid might want to do. All right, next.
Hi, Charlie Rowan. I have a 12-year-old, and he video games a lot, and he sees tons of people making $500,000 in 5 months from streaming live on video gaming. And he has no interest in current school, he has no interest in going to college, and I'm just not sure what to do.
Yeah. Well, I bet there are a lot of people like, yeah. I wonder what the equivalent of that was 20 years ago. A lot of people go out into the world and have something to do with video game production, okay? It is a legitimate field. There are lots of different talents and strengths needed to produce those things, and it may be that your kid is headed on that path. I have a nephew in England who's a video game producer guy, and he's making good money, and, who would have thought? He did, and that's where he went. So I would expose him to, I would see who you know around here who's doing that work, have them sit down with him and talk about the kind of work you have to do, the kind of school subjects you got to be good at in order to really be successful in this field. Take him seriously and inform him, his understanding a little bit more about, what does it take to succeed in this field. I would also be mindful of the limits you're putting on his video gaming. Sometimes we behave as if technology is, that it's sort of taken over, we're at its mercy, and we have to remember we're still the parent. We still have to impose boundaries and rules and expectations around what type of thing, how long, duration, time of day, what have you. It's okay for you to limit that. It's okay for you to kind of drag him out of that a little bit and get him outside and get him doing other things in order to kind of infuse his life with a little bit more than that. It's for him to craft this life, and he may not blossom as quickly as you had hoped. And I'm not saying this is not blossoming, but this may be a phase or a fad he's going through. It may, he may not yet have had the thing that's turned him on to the thing he will ultimately become. 12 is rather young. So at this point I would focus more on just not letting it be the be all and end all, the only thing. And beginning to expose him to, all right, if this is the kind of thing you think you might want to do, here are some people who've done it, and here's what it takes to be successful at that. All right, next. Yes, down here. It's coming.
So So to
Go ahead.
So to tap into her comment, this year the World Health Organization designated technology disorder as a thing.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing as kids are coming in, and what is your perspective or your position on that? And because I know it's controversial, some people think it's a thing in the industry, and some people don't.
So the question is about technology disorder and what I see and what I think. I don't have a perspective as a college person on this. I left Stanford 6 years ago to go get an MFA to write a book. So I don't know what's being experienced at the college level right now around students and technology addictions or disorders. What I value is the wisdom of Common Sense Media, this Bay Area nonprofit that advises us on the suitability of movies and television and technology. They've produced research, reports. They're a fantastic source of information. So I would go to their website and take a look. There's a plethora of information there. There's also a book recently out called Media Moms and Digital Dads, written by a psychologist specializing in kids and media. So rather than try to, share with you like what I've done in my own house, I'd rather you look at these sources of expertise. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. What about the child who is so motivated to go to one of these bumper sticker schools, and you really feel that you want to give them more options, like these other 10, and they're so resistant, like I don't want to go see these small schools, to help them see that there's another side?
Yes. How old's the kid?
She's a junior.
Junior. Okay, so the kid wants to go to one of the bumper sticker schools. I'm going to share with you some wisdom that's in my book, articulated by an admissions officer at Smith College. You've heard of it, in Northampton, Massachusetts. It sits in a 5-college consortium alongside Amherst, UMass Amherst, Mount Holyoke, and Hampshire. What am I doing? I'm name dropping the names of other schools that may not be on your list. Okay, so the admissions officer there named Sid Dalby shares this when she gives admissions talks. She says, folks, and this is what I would say to your kid, look, honey, if there's a 5 to 10% chance of rain, are you going to take an umbrella or a raincoat? And the answer is probably not. You hope the answer is not. You need the answer to be not, because then you want to say, okay, so if there's why don't you take a raincoat if they predict 5 to 10% chance of rain in Laguna Beach? Because it's not going to rain. You don't want to be encumbered by the stuff you don't need. The point is this: if there's a 5 to 10% chance of admission to one of these places, right? Why do we think somehow those odds are, going to play out in your favor? It's not about don't apply to those places. It's don't bank on it, and don't feel like a loser if those places don't come through. It's more like, holy moly, that happened. It's like winning a lottery. Gee, how did that happen? Those odds did play out in my favor, okay? Rather than, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me because they didn't. So you can say it's all well and good for you to put those places on your list, but there are plenty of other great schools, and you have to say that backed up with believing it, okay? It's hard to say to a kid, oh, you can go anywhere, when your entire mug collection is University of whatever, right? Your alma mater, everything in your house, your man cave, your she cave, it's like that school, right? That school, you can go anywhere, but that school, right? All the sweatshirts you wear, the t-shirts, like walk the walk, look for the unexamined messages you are sending. Okay, what we began doing early on was saying, oh, you don't want to go to school up the street. You got to go away to college. That was one way to divert attention from the magnificent university in our backyard, okay? Oh, you should go away to school. There are plenty of great schools, okay? We've been saying there are plenty of great schools, and what I'm trying to tell you is, I knew to say it, but now I actually believe it, all right? The other thing I want to say, you can say, you know what? Well, this is more if a kid's getting pressure from the outside. You can say, some people are obsessed with those places, but we're not obsessed with that here, And you just sort of talk about those other people as some people are crazy about it. And often the kid can hear it if things start to go a little south, if there's a grade that is freaking him or her out. Like, I'm not going to get into da-da-da because I got to, and you say, you know what? That happens. I didn't have a perfect record. Your dad didn't have a perfect record. Look, we're happy and successful people. You know, if that place wants perfection, too bad for them. You know, you're going to go someplace and you're going to be great. They can often hear us around the message of widening their blinders in those moments of struggle when they really need role models for the fact that, yeah, life doesn't go perfectly all the time. I got 2 people who love me who told me that's true, and now I can see a path through for myself. I'm going to end it because I think,
thank you.
yeah,
and
you
so
guys.
what we're
yeah.
going to transition to is a book signing now with Julie up front, and so there's a bookmark for you on your way out. And if you're staying in here for our breakout session with the high school Q&A, that'll start at 7:30, and the other breakout sessions will start at 7:30. Julie will also be available up, extending her time at the book signing up until about 7:45. Thank you very much, and have a great night.